Coming up on Chasing the Natty, we're continuing our Crash Course series for all of you who need to be caught up on what you need to know as you prepare for your college fantasy drafts in the next upcoming month. Today, we're taking a look at the running backs as we discuss the top 36 in our Campus to Canton CFF team's rankings, who is going too high and too low in drafts, and then what competitions we have our eye on during the fall camps. We've got all of that and more coming right after this.
To go, breaks the tackle, he's 10, he's touchdown! Cook's gonna throw the deep ball, and Burton past the defense! Touchdown, Luther Burton! Milrow gonna run it again, got a lane, kicked in the turbo, Milrow! Goodbye, touchdown Bama!
This is Chasing the Natty, a college fantasy football podcast. All right, welcome in everyone. This is Jared Palmgren, host of the Chasing the Natty podcast. I hope you guys are having a wonderful ride to your work on this Monday morning. We are the College Fantasy Football Podcast on the Campus Canton Podcast Network. You can find us on all of your podcast feeds and on YouTube every Monday morning during the off season at 6 a.m. sharp. If you want to support the great work we're doing here, head on over to campus2canton.com, subscribe there to any of our phenomenal tiers. We have content ranging on all sorts of college football games, whether it's college fantasy, Devy, Campus to Canton Leagues, College IDP, College DFS, Underdog Best Balls. If you play it, we've got content, whether that's tools, rankings, pretty much everything you need to succeed. If you want to get in touch for whatever reason, you can find me and the show on Twitter. I'm at CFF_Jared. The show is at Chasing the Natty. And joining us today, last week, we had a fellow named John who gave Ted Lasso a run for his money with regard to his mustache. This week, we have a fellow named John whose heart could rival Ted Lasso. It is Mr. John Laub, the Gridiron Scholar. John, welcome back to the show, man. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Oh, thanks for asking me on this running back show, Jared. We are 20 days away from week 0 kickoff. I cannot believe it. So everyone has about 3 weeks if they want to do a season-long or best ball league. But remember, most leagues don't count week 0. So you do have an extra 6-day window if you want to get into a CFF league. But we are here. It's amazing, Jared.
It is a ton of fun. I don't know about you, John. I am like running around with a chicken cut, like a chicken with its head cut off right now, trying to make sure all my leagues, like we all have draft times. We all got to make sure that we're ready to go by season start. I fully anticipate I'll be taking advantage of that week 0 period of kind of getting a few last minute drafts in there. We've got the Kings Classic draft next weekend, which is going to be a ton of fun up there at the Expo. You and Matt Hicks are going to be streaming that live on the Rookie Big Board channel. It's, in my opinion, probably the biggest CFF draft that any of us do every single year. I have been attempting to win that league for 3 years straight now. 4th time's a charm, I guess. I'm looking forward to that. So if y'all haven't already, go subscribe to the Rookie Big Board channel and make sure you have notifications turned on for that next weekend. That's going to be an absolute blast.
Yeah, I can't wait to get to Canton. One, to see you again, Jared. He's been there every year. So there's a couple of us now. I think there's about 3 or 4 of us who have been there live every year that we've done the draft. It's in Canton, Ohio. This is the second year we're actually drafting out of the Hall of Fame. If you have not been there, this is a first-class room. I mean, TVs, giant screen. It is beautiful where we get to draft from, and we have 14 players. We added 2 additional this year. Last year, the first 3 years, we were 12. This year is 14. And what Jared is referring to, he's awesome CFF player. He's gone to the finals twice, and last year I was lucky enough to just squeak by him in the semifinals. I know Jared is itching to win this. He's an awesome competitor, but he does want to win the Kings Classic.
Yeah, I am proud of the fact that I am the only team that has made the playoffs in that league all 3 years, but I just haven't been able to bring the prize home yet. So obviously I'm working towards that again this year. That room is awesome. You guys will see me post pictures of it it again this year. It is really, in my opinion, one of the coolest experiences you can do as a college fantasy player. But John, we got a great show ahead here for everybody. Again, we're continuing our series. We're going to talk some running backs today. For those of you who did not check out our quarterback show last week, first of all, stop what you're doing. Go check out that show with John McKechnie and everything. It was a great show. But the basic format of these crash courses is that we're trying to provide you as much information as possible for the players, like for the players at the different positions, right? So we're going to go through the top 36 running backs here today. Afterwards, John and I will discuss some guys that we think are going too low in rankings, some guys that are going too high in drafts, and then we'll look kind of a bit towards the future because we're really just starting to get into fall camps right now. And we'll tell you about some competitions that really we think could end up shaping up big time during the college fantasy season that you can possibly get ahead on right now. So, John, before we get to all of that, I got to do some rambling first. I got to go and talk about some of the amazing stuff that we have going on over at campusofcanton.com, which, first of all, again, we're doing these crash course videos. We provide a lot of great information out of these. But if you want more in-depth look at all the players we're going to talk about here today, some players that we may not go in-depth on today, go check out our CFF guide over at campusofcanton.com. Came out last month. It is phenomenal, the amount of content that you can get to hear. Breakdowns on all 134 FBS teams. If you're a Power 4 only league, you can just focus on those teams. It has 200 plus player profiles in there. I believe you go 48 deep at quarterback, 60 at running back, 72 wide receivers, and 36 tight ends. So you get in-depth looks at all those players. You get rankings that go even deeper than that. So make sure you go and check it out. There's even more fun stuff in there. Again, we got like a freshman 50 section. We got defensive analysis. We got schedule analysis, system analysis, pretty much anything you need to be prepared for the season. It will be there. So go check that out. Only $20 on campusofcanton.com. In addition, go check out the latest episode of Defending the Natty, where Nate and I we're predicting what the first round of the 2025 CFF Dynasty startups are going to look like. It is a great show. Again, we agreed on about half the players, and then the other half was spent us just trying to surprise the other one on who we think is going to actually make it into the first rounds next year. So it was an absolute great time, so go check that out as well. In addition, check out our CFF Draft live streams every Sunday on YouTube. These shows are great for making sure that you get caught up on different positions, but these live streams are fantastic for just hearing us sit back, talk about college fantasy, talk about college football. We go through a 30-round draft every Sunday. It's a ton of fun. It's a great way to get caught up on everything like that. All right, John, enough rambling, man. I think it's time we get started talking about these running backs. And we'll start with our top 12 here. Actually, we won't start with our top 12 because I just realized, John, I should ask you, running backs this year, how do you kind of feel about them in general?
I think they're deep. I think there's a lot of risk once you get out of the top 12. I really am excited when I can draft a team with two of the top 12 runners. And, results are what they are, but opportunity is what we're looking for. And I feel like in the top 12, we have a really good list of players who should get 200 touches minimum between the passing and the running game. And I really want to try to get two of those. I do believe there are running backs between 13 and 40 who will end up in the top 12, but Jared, I've done at least 14 drafts. I'm sure you've done even more than me by now. We aren't 100. We all have our guys, right? We have players who we like more than others, but I've had bad luck in the past where the players got injured and they didn't get 100 or 200 carries, right? They went to a committee back. The offensive tweaked a little bit. The player had a nicked up leg. Look at Travion Henderson last year, right? He didn't get the touches that we had hoped. So I'm trying to land two of those top 12 because then I think you have a real high floor every week with opportunity.
No, I certainly agree. Again, I've discussed this with you. I've discussed this with Justin Leo in the past, where I think compared to the last couple of years, I think this might be the deepest running back class that we've had in quite a while. But like you said, really outside of maybe some of these guys in the top 12, like every single one of them has question marks, but every single one of them also has a path to some insane workloads this year. That's kind of what makes it so exciting. Now, just like any year with running back, even though this is a deep class at running back, I would say it still drops off more than any other position by the time you get to the end of your draft, right? So a lot of times, and something that Justin, Leo, and I kind of agree on, I do still go running back heavy, even though it's a deeper class to start drafts, because of the fact that it's just such a good class. Might as well load up on as many of these top end guys as you can. And like you said, John, just kind of get as many safe guys as possible versus in years past, you may not have that as much and you're willing to go with some of the other positions there. So I would say that's pretty much kind of the way I'm looking at it. Again, to me, it's insane. Like I'm looking at last year, right? Of the top 12, we had 5 running backs come back, which is pretty much unheard of in college fantasy. Usually if you're
that's unbelievable.
I would say usually if you're a running back in the top 12, unless you're like a true freshman or a true sophomore or something like that, you're probably going to the NFL in one way, shape, or form, because every one of these guys are pushed to the NFL because, you know, there's only so much tread they have on their tire. So I think that's part of what makes it good. But then also, again, you got 3 more guys between Jaden Ott, or 2 more guys between Jaden Ott and Ishmael Mahdi who came back, who were in that next 13 to 24 range. Taj Brooks, DJ Giddens, Quentin Cooley, LaQuint Allen, Cameron Scatterbo, Antonio Brown. Those are all Damian Martinez. All those guys were in the 25 to 36 range last year. It really makes it feel very safe at the top for the most part. Speaking of the guys at the top, let's go ahead and start going into these top 12 guys here, John. And I'll list them off here real quick. At number 1 in our Campus of Canton CFF teams rankings, we have Ashton G&T, running back out of Boise State. At RB2, we have Ollie Gordon, the running back out of Oklahoma State. At RB3, Amarian Hampton, running back out of North Carolina. At RB4, we have Darius Taylor, running back out of Minnesota. At RB5, we have DJ Giddens, the running back out of Kansas State. At RB6, we have Devin Neal, the running back out of Kansas. At RB7, we have Phil Mafah, the running back out of Clemson. At RB8, we have Taj Brooks, the running back out of Texas Tech. At RB9, we have Damian Martinez, the former running back out of Oregon State, transferring there over to Miami of Florida. At RB10, we have Malik Sherrod, the running back out of Fresno State. At RB11, we have RJ Harvey, the running back out of UCF. And bringing up the rear here in the top 12 is Mario Anderson, running back formerly of South Carolina, now at Memphis. So, John, we'll start with your guys here. Again, we're not going to be able to go through every single one of these guys here. So, John, I asked you to pick out 2 guys in this range that you personally feel are the most interesting running backs in this range. So, I'll go ahead and throw your guys on the screen here. Why don't you start with Mr. Phil Mafah there at Clemson?
I want to speak about Phil Mafah because we've had glimpses of him in the past. And last year, we had a real nice extended look at Phil Mafah when he has the backfield to himself. If you don't remember, last year, Will Shipley was the starter at the beginning of the year, but he did get injured and miss some significant time. So if you go back and look at the final 6 games of the year, Jared, when Phil Mafah was the guy for the most part, he scored in PPR scoring, and that's what we do in the Kings Classic. So we are a believer in PPR scoring format. Phil Mafah scored 24, 30, 12, 17, 10, and 33 fantasy points. He was getting probably 2 to 3 receptions each game, but the touchdown equity was there. And, you know, I love NFL fantasy football, college fantasy football, and sometimes we miss and we don't talk about touchdown equity. He is the main back. I mean, Jared, maybe, you know, I've looked at the depth chart. I'm not scared of anyone else right now. I know they have a freshman, but I'm weary of most freshmen. Just, you know, I keep it a little reserved. I don't think Clemson has another back where I have to worry as a college fantasy football owner. Mafah should by far have the majority of touches there. I mean, could Clemson's offensive line be worse than last year? I mean, they were really bad. If they just take them, I'm looking, just please finish in like the top 50 or 50 to 60 range of graded offensive lines, and Mafah and that offense should be better. He's a big back. He's between the tackles back, and I'll take the goal line touchdown equity that should come from Phil Mafah.
I'm trying to do some calculations real quick just to kind of get – how many points did he score in the bowl game there?
He had 33.4. That's against Kentucky, you're saying, right?
Yes, sir. Yep. I'm just trying to make sure because that's a 20.78 fantasy points per game stretch that he was going on there. And if you bring that over a 12-game sample size, I know Chris K is rolling his eyes at me because I do this all the time, but it's a way to look at it. It's a way to identify. Yes. Is going to be a common theme in a lot of running backs that we talk about here today because a lot of these guys had really good finishes. Yeah, if you look at what Phil Mafah did to finish the season last year, at that pace, he would have gotten 249.4 fantasy points on the season, and that would have been good enough for RB10 last year. So that's why, if people are wondering, like, how are you expecting him to make this big jump from RB48, which is where he finished last year, to RB10, that's it right there, right? And you're 100% right, John. Clemson, because of their transfer portal philosophy, didn't bring anybody else in.
No,
and so when they have guys behind him like Keith Adams, and there's another one I can't remember off the top of my head, right? Like, you're not scared of those guys. These aren't like super blue chip guys. I know they got not Justice Haynes. There's another, I forget his. There's another Jay Haynes at Clemson, but he's not really doing much either. Again, I'm a big fan of David Ezemume, the aforementioned freshman that you mentioned earlier, Laub, but I agree with you. I'm not scared of him to really take over much from Phil Mafah this year. And that's the big selling point with Mafah, right? It's very similar in a way to DJ Giddens was for a while as well, where it's like there was nobody else there. Nobody else there. And for Mafah, there's still nobody else there. So I completely understand. I haven't drafted a ton of Mafah because when I'm going in these first couple of rounds, I do tend to avoid a little bit these guys that require just a bit of projection here, right? And Phil Mafah, of all the guys here in the top 12, definitely I would say outside of him and one of the guys I'll talk about here, Darius Taylor, all these other guys, we've really seen them do it before over a full season, right? Outside of, actually, I see Mario Anderson hanging out there at the end as well, but because of that, like, I typically go for guys like Malik Sherrod. I typically go for guys like RJ Harvey or even Jaden Ott in this range who will come up in the next range here. But I don't think people who take Phil Mafah really are looking at a bad pick at all. I think I'm a little queasy if you take him in the first round, but second round, excellent pick.
Oh, I love him in the second round. I haven't looked what his ADP is. For a while, he was a second rounder, right? Yeah.
He is currently going in ADP as RB8 at 15.9. So that's like about the 204 on average.
I feel that's a nice spot to grab Phil Mafah 204. I agree. Second round is solid.
Alrighty, John, what about the other guy you want to talk about here? Damian Martinez, again, former running back out of Oregon State, now at Miami of Florida.
I am real excited about him with Miami. And I just want to say one thing. I'm sorry, Miami fans. I'm not convinced they're back yet, but I think they're headed in the right direction. And I think acquiring Damian Martinez in the transfer portal, yes, Quinshon Judkins is the guy. That was the biggest, in my opinion, the biggest grab by Ohio State. But Damian Martinez going to the Hurricanes, I believe, is the number 2 running back who's most interesting. And I don't know if everyone has watched him, but we are junkies. We stay up for these Pac-12 games. Mm-hmm. And anyone who has watched Oregon State over the last 2 years, I'm just going to be kind. Their quarterback play stunk. I mean, Damian Martinez was the offense, and he is a big man. If you have not watched him play, and I think there's going to be a lot of new college fans this year who are going to be amazed at how big and strong Damian Martinez is. He does have small man feet. And what I mean by that is he can blast through the hole. He can lateral jump cut, avoid a tackle. And Jared, you've seen it. Once he gets a safety one-on-one or a defensive back,
it's over.
Damian Martinez likes to hurt people. He's going to the Hurricanes. He's playing now with Cam Ward, who is by far, there wasn't even a quarterback sniffing the Beavers in the zip code, even in the same state as Cam Ward. Well, why is that important? That has to keep the linebackers and safeties honest. He is going to convert third down opportunities that the Beavers did not have just because the offense would stall. I would think his efficiency goes up. Touches should be about the same. I mean, game script matters if Miami blows people out. Also, Cam Ward, I think he had 12 touchdowns, if I'm correct, or 11 last year.
Correct.
But he's not a scrambler, Jared.
He's not.
So I'm not afraid. I think those are like fluky, weird touchdowns. I mean, he's good with his legs, but he's not Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, anything like that. He kind of just got in the end zone. You now put Damian Martinez. He should have all of the touchdowns inside the 10-yard line. I just like him a ton. I mean, I think I have him at ADP about 22 right now. So he's going off in the second round. And I've probably got, you ever look at your roster percentage sometimes, Jared?
Oh, yeah.
I probably have too much Damian Martinez because I like him so much. But I am really high on him. I think Miami's back. They're going to be better. I don't know if they'll make the playoffs. We'll see. But Damian Martinez and Cam Ward make this a much better offense. And one thing that I'll say, Cristobal is extraordinarily good as an offensive line coach. That Miami offensive line is so much better than they've been in the last couple of years. Remember, he's the gentleman at Oregon who got Penei Sewell there and got a bunch of Oregon players drafted in the NFL. He's got that Miami. I think they returned 5 starters, at least 4. So Miami's going to run the ball, Jared.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot to be excited here for Damian Martinez, but kind of similar to Mafah, he's a guy that, because of some of the other guys going around him in that range, right, I tend to kind of come off of him a little bit because, again, transfer automatically, in my opinion, kind of knocks guys down a little bit, although I do think this is a really nice landing spot for Damian Martinez. And to your point about Cam Ward and his rushing ability, like, he ran the ball 120 times last year, and he got 144 yards. He's not.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
He's not and he got 8 touchdowns last year, not 12.
Oh, 8, sorry.
But regardless, like, you're right. It was almost all QB sneaks at the goal line. Within 5 yards, he just scrambled into the end zone and stuff like that, which is part of the reason why he got as high as he did in fantasy last year, right? He way overperformed rushing-wise in terms of touchdown equity, as you kind of pointing out earlier. Here's kind of my 2 issues with Damian Martinez, in addition to just, transfer, knocking him down a little bit. I love Damian Martinez as a player. I've been on him since he was a freshman. I think he's a fantastic player. Problem is, Mark Fletcher seems to be a lot healthier coming into this fall camp than we were initially thinking that he was going to be. From what it seemed like, they kind of brought in Damian Martinez, and I was theorizing when they first brought him in, like, okay, this is the opportunity for them to kind of, bring Fletcher back slowly, let Martinez handle it for a year, and then Fletcher handles it next year. That way they don't make the same mistake as like they did with Citizen. Now, Citizen had a really screwed up leg, so that's not exactly a one-to-one comparison there, but regardless, like, they would want to bring Fletcher back slowly. Well, it sounds like from fall camps that Fletcher's doing really, really well, and this almost might be a 1A, 1B back situation here. In addition, you look at Mario Cristobal's history. He doesn't tend to focus on one back. And I think that, combined with Fletcher kind of coming back healthily here, makes me a little concerned that this isn't going to be quite the workhorse that we want it to be. And that makes me a little queasy here in like this first, second round range here, top end range. But even still, like, if you want to bet on talent, I totally get it. Damian Martinez is a beast. Everything you said about him is true, Laub. He's that perfect kind of back that you want to have. If he earns extra touches, he's not given extra touches, he earns extra touches. And if you want to bet on that, totally understand that. I just am a little queasy about him in this range. All right, some of the guys I'm interested in with this range, and I say interested in, not in that I've drafted them the most or anything like that. It's more of like, I just realized the 2 guys I'm going to talk about here are guys that I do own quite a bit. But I think they're the ones worth talking about the most, right? Because again, like guys like G&T, Gordon, Hampton, Neal, like it's clear why they're in this top end range. But I'll start with Darius Taylor here. He's our RB4 in our rankings, but dadgum, do I see him slip into the second round? I know in underdog drafts, he definitely slips into the second round sometimes. But even in full FBS drafts, he'll slip into the second round. He'll sometimes be RB9, RB10 off the board here. And some people might be looking at his last year's stats and being like, what's going on here, Jared? This dude finished like RB. I should have written this down. Yeah, I didn't write down what he actually finished at last year, but it wasn't good. It wasn't pretty because he missed so many games.
He's probably outside the last top 40, I would think. Because
outside the top 100.
Okay.
Outside the top 100 running backs.
Wow. Okay.
But even still, right? This all boils down to the PJ Fleck running back, right? When healthy, they're one of the most prized possessions in college fantasy. Just look at the last 10 years we're looking at here. Back to PJ Fleck's time at Western Michigan, right? Jarvian Franklin in 2014, 300 touches, 1,500 yards, and 24 touchdowns on the ground, right? 2 years later, 250 carries, 1,353 yards, 12 touchdowns, and it just keeps going. Muhammad Ibrahim for 3 years terrorized the Big Ten under PJ Fleck. He got injured in 1 year in 2021, and in that one game, he had a stat line of 30 carries, 163 yards, and 2 touchdowns before he was out the rest of the year. PJ Fleck loves having one guy that he goes, right? And Darius Taylor, based on what we saw last year, was going to be that guy for PJ Fleck moving forward. Darius Taylor by week 4 was already in the top 12 running backs in college fantasy before going down to his injury and missing the last 7 of his remaining 8 games of the regular season. But during those 3 games, these were his stat lines: 33 carries, 193 yards and a touchdown, 22 carries, 138 yards and a touchdown, 31 carries, 198 yards and 2 touchdowns. Oh, by the way, some people might be saying like, oh, well, maybe he's not the same coming back from his injury. Well, he came back for the bowl game against Bowling Green and ran for 208 yards on 35 attempts. Dude's fine.
Dude is fine.
Dude's fine. Obviously, the big concern here is that the volume's insane for these PJ Fleck running backs. And when they are healthy, they're great, but because of that workload, you increase the risk of them getting hurt. And a lot of people very much scared off by the fact that Darius Taylor in year 1 under PJ Fleck got hurt and missed that many games. Here's the thing, though. Darius Taylor is not like an injury concern waiting to happen. He carried a big workload in high school as well and didn't deal with any injuries there as well. Sometimes guys just get injured. Now, again, fingers crossed that he's been given plenty of time to recover here and that whatever injury he dealt with last year is not something he'll be dealing with for years to come. But that's a point in favor of saying that, like, okay, maybe Darius Taylor is not a guy that we're just sitting around waiting to get injured again. And even still, just in 2022, right, people are like concerned about what happened in 2021, right? After Muhammad Ibrahim went down, it was just a crazy set of circumstances where just every Minnesota running back just kept getting injured after that point, and that has scarred us as CFF players. But even in 2022, Muhammad Ibrahim, 320 touches, 1,665 yards, 20 touchdowns. Like, it's not always doom and gloom with this offense. We get good running backs out of this. It's just a roll of the dice. That makes him one of the riskiest players, in my opinion, to draft here in the first round of these running backs. Again, we have him as high as RB4, but like I said earlier, he falls later. So, John, how do you feel about Darius Taylor? I'm kind of sound hypocritical here because I'm off of guys like Phil Mafah and Damian Martinez that require a little bit of projection, but I'm kind of all in on like drafting Darius Taylor, especially if he does fall to the second half of the first round.
Well, I understand why you love him, and I would put him actually in the same tier. And, I'm very tier-oriented. I think they're all big backs and good systems. However, you made a very valid point. He might be the one back who's most likely to average 28 carries a game. If I was going to say there's one guy I'm going to have to place a little wager on, it would be Darius Taylor. because of the PJ Fleck system, which is also kind of funny because if you've been watching PJ Fleck like I have for years now, and you have mentioned Western Michigan, he originally was known as a passing coach. And Western Michigan, I believe he was the coach with Corey Davis there when he was at Western Michigan, who ended up a first-round draft pick. And they put the ball in the air, and they were real explosive. But when you do dig deeper, he did have good running backs all the time. And I will say, though, since he's gone to Minnesota, he's even seemed to have scaled back on the passing. Maybe it's he can't get the quarterback that he needs at Minnesota. That could be it. I think the receivers are fine for the college level, but I wonder about the quality of the quarterback because he seems to go to this run-heavy offense, especially when he gets the lead. And you had mentioned Mohamed Ibrahim. I never forget that game he got hurt. That was against Ohio State.
Yep.
And Ibrahim was having a game when he got hurt and he missed that whole year. So I agree with you with Darius Taylor. The only reason I have him a little lower than Martinez and Mafah in my rankings is we haven't seen it long enough because he was a freshman last year and he's a sophomore this year. So I'm not – does he look for 300 carries? Yes. Do I feel that he's guaranteed 300 carries? Like, I think Mafah is going to get 300 carries. I don't know if Darius Taylor will just because of the health concerns.
Totally understandable. All right, my second running back here that I have highlighted in this first year is RJ Harvey. Last year's RB6 on the year. He had a phenomenal season, 226 carries, 1,416 yards. So super explosive player, 16 touchdowns on the ground. Also caught 19 balls for 238 yards and 2 additional touchdowns. That way, to start this offseason, he was a consensus first-round pick. Now you can see him sometimes fall into the late third, even early fourth in some drafts. Now, I think it's kind of bounced back a little bit since then because I think people are getting a little carried away with how far they were dropping him down. But why? And this is part of the reason why I think he's an interesting talking point here, right? Penny Boone. That's the name of the game here, right? That's the name people are worried about here. Penny Boone obviously was a top 10 CFF running back last year at Toledo, transfers out, at first went to Louisville, was there for the spring. Something happened there. I'm not going to speculate what, but something happened there. And Boone's out again, and he transfers again. Originally was supposed to go to Kentucky instead, but then couldn't figure. I think it's something academic wise that like he was transferring into later, or something like that. Basically couldn't get into Kentucky, and UCF just kind of came in, almost bargain bin hunting, and said like, oh, well, if nobody else will take you, I'll take you. And people started getting concerned here, right? And they're like, oh my God, this like highly productive back is now going to share the backfield with Harvey. This is going to be a huge, oh my God, what am I talking about? Detriment.
Competition?
Or competition, or a detriment to Harvey's production, basically. And they're like, oh, they're going to split more carries. It's going to be a 1A, 1B type situation here. Listen, I will fully admit that Boone is in a lot better shape than he was last time he came to the Power 4. I used to say that, like, oh, he was terrible at Maryland, he was bad in the Power 4. Well, he's in a lot better shape now. Again, there was some strength and conditioning issues there that he's since resolved. And so, like, I can't even say that anymore. But here's the thing. I still don't love the transition from the MAC to the Power 4. Yeah, he's going to the Big 12, probably the most friendly conference that he could have gone to. But even still, when you look at guys that transfer multiple times and the only places they've truly been successful are at the G5 level and they're now coming back up to the Power 4 level, the track record just still isn't great for the most part. In addition, like, I still don't get where this narrative of, like, this is going to absolutely tank RJ Harvey. RJ Harvey's going to get his in this offense, y'all. Like, he ran the ball 226 times, not even a huge workload last year. He was just an explosive dude. He could rip off a 50, 60, 70-yard touchdown at any given point against Big 12 competition. Yeah, maybe he doesn't get to 226 touches again. Maybe he's just at 200. Oh, no, we're dealing with a 1,200-yard running back rather than a 1,400-yard running back. And some people were saying, like, oh, like he's going to regress on the touchdowns because he had 18 touchdowns last year. How so? You typically see running backs hit about a touchdown for every 100 yards that they rush, and he had, 10 1,600 yards last year and 18 touchdowns. So what, he regresses 2 touchdowns? That's not going to drop him massively from where he was last year. I'm basically saying I'm tired of the slander here. RJ Harvey's still going to be a top 12 running back for college fantasy this year, and I'm flag planting on that. John, what do you think of RJ Harvey?
I have him at number 12 in my rankings. So I completely agree that he's fallen too far. And I think you made a really good point. Penny Boone, he's not very good. We've heard about Penny Boone forever. I feel as if he's failed to live up to expectations most of the time.
Except last year.
RJ Harvey is so explosive. And if you were playing DFS like I do early in the year, RJ Harvey was a rock star. Got me a lot of little, buckets of coin early in the season because people did not know how good he was with the Knights. Also, I do believe, let me look here, I think he's more of a pass catcher than people give him credit for.
Oh,
yes,
he's great out of the
game locks here. Yes, a lot of 2, 4, 1, 2, 2, 2, 4, 0, a couple zeros, but a lot. I like that little bit of pass catching equity that you get out of him, and he can take a short pass to the house at any moment. He had a 50-yard touchdown in the first week of the season against Kent State. I think he's underrated. If you don't like him, maybe you don't like UCF. You don't think they're going to be very good. But I don't think it should be because of Penny Boone.
No, and some people might be saying like, oh, well, KJ Jefferson is a rushing quarterback. I'm like, yeah, so was John Rice Plumlee. He was completely fine when John Rice Plumlee was out there as well. In fact, they were a great duo in that backfield. They helped each other. And so I'm hoping the same thing happens here with KJ Jefferson. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our second tier of running backs. This is RBs 13 through 24 here. At RB 13, we have Gavin Sawchuk, the running back out of Oklahoma. At number 14, we have Mekhi Hughes, the running back out of Tulane. At number 15, we have Ishmael Mahdi, the running back out of Texas State. At number 16, we have Jalen White, the running back out of Georgia Southern. At number 17, we have CJ Baxter Jr., the running back out of Texas. At number 18, we have Kyle Monangai, the running back out of Rutgers. At number 19, we have Jordan James, the running back out of Oregon. At number 20, we have Ontario Brown, the running back out of Northern Illinois. At number 21, we have LaQuint Allen, the running back out of Syracuse. At number 22, we have Quentin Cooley, the running back out of Liberty. At number 23, we have Jaheim White, the running back out of West Virginia. And number 24, we have Cameron Scatabo, the running back out of Arizona State. John, let's start with your two guys that you're interested in with this tier. You have Mr. CJ Baxter up here first. Tell me why you're so interested in this man.
Ceiling, 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 ceiling. To me, it's about the opportunity to get a Steve Sarkisian running back. We have a really nice history. I believe he started USC when he first started having these dominant running backs. And I believe he took it when he was at Washington, then when he was with Alabama. Now that's with Nick Saban. So you do get, and you have great running backs there. So, but then he took it to Texas with Bijan Robinson. Last year, Jonathan Brooks became, if he wasn't injured, Jonathan Brooks might have won a lot of people CFF championships. He just missed, I think, the final 3 or 4 games, which was the playoffs late in the season.
I think he was the final 2 games of the season.
There you go. And that right at the playoffs. So you take CJ Baxter, and I know Jaden Blue's on the roster, and I get it. And there are people who like Jaden Blue more than CJ Baxter. If you look at some advanced stats, they'll argue that, Jaden Blue was better. But sometimes college is an interesting game. When you try to compare apples to apples for efficiency, sometimes people forget that you're playing against third-team defense. Sometimes you're playing against backups late in games, so your efficiency. Texas is going to be much stronger depth-wise late in games. So sometimes efficiency can be a little misleading in college because you're playing against backups. What I do like is when Jonathan Brooks went down, CJ Baxter was the guy. Mm-hmm. He was the guy. So what does that tell me? The coaching staff, as of last year, felt that Baxter was their number one player. Remember, he played in the playoff game against Washington. Look, they're going for a national championship. If you didn't think C.J. Baxter was going to be your guy, are you going to put him into the national championship game, and rely on him? He had 2 receptions, 39 yards, 9 carries, 64 yards, scored a touchdown. I really like the talent. I do think right now, what is he? Maybe 60% chance he should lead the backfield right now from looking at the tea leaves and reading what we get out of training camp. I think what I like also about Baxter, because of the Jadon Blue and the ambiguity with the backfield, his ADP is fallen. You can get him right now. I have an ADP of about 53 on Fantrax. You're looking at a 5th round back. If you are drafting now and you like Baxter like you just have to get Jadon Blue. You have to, the old handcuff, as they would say. Mm-hmm. You just have to make sure that you're going to grab Jadon Blue a little bit earlier than whatever the ADP is. And I'm okay with that because one of them I would expect, one of them will be a star. I think it's Baxter. So I wanted to give Baxter a shout out here because he's fallen a little bit in drafts that I've been in lately.
So when this season first started, I had Baxter as my RB5, and he said
I had him high too.
And because I was like, okay, this is clear cut, right? And obviously some things have happened since then that have made me I was talked out of him a little bit, but also too the spring reports, weren't exactly glowing about Baxter or anything like that. But here's the thing, John, and you kind of touched on this. Not only was Baxter the guy that Steve Sarkisian and everybody went to after Jonathan Brooks went down last year, Baxter actually got the first carry of the season for Texas last year. So that should tell you everything that, yes, maybe his on-field production wasn't exactly what we wanted to see. Yeah, maybe his efficiency, all the advanced metrics, they weren't there. This staff clearly likes what they see from him in practice enough to where they thought that starting year 1, he could be the guy. And then after Brooks went down, he was the only one out of the 2 that you would see getting 20 touches in a game. Jadon Blue, I'm looking at his stats right now. The most amount of carries that he got in a single game was 10. Now, he had some receptions to go in there as well, but clearly they used him more as a change of pace back. And if they were going to have a guy they relied on, it was going to be Baxter. He was the one that you could see in those stat lines getting 20-plus carries in a single game. So I'm with you, John. I adore, if I'm going running back heavy in my draft, I adore getting 2 top-end running backs. So give me give me an Ashton G&T, grab Jaden Ott on the back end of the 2nd round, and then give me give me Jaden Ott on the 2nd round, and then give me Baxter as that 3rd grand slam guy, right? Where if he is that dude, I got 3 top-end CFF running backs here. And so, yes, I like Baxter's value right now. I still wouldn't be comfortable drafting him if you go kind of later with your running backs, grabbing him as your 1st or even 2nd option at running back. But if you're getting him as your 3rd one, excellent. I will disagree slightly on the Jadon Blue thing. Jadon Blue has become a very expensive handcuff.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Because he is going in the 11th round of a lot of drafts. And I've seen him go as high as the 8th, 9th round. And again, I get it. There's some people who really, really think he'll be that guy for Texas. But I don't know, man. That's a very now, it's the Steve Sarkisian running back. It's probably one of the only positions that I think is worth handcuffing like that in a way like that. But also still just know if you do go down that route, it's not a cheap handcuff. And if you'd rather go a different direction, that's probably the best way to go about it.
I agree. I didn't know he was that high. I would have said if I got him in the 12th, I would have been okay with that depending on roster construction. 9, that seems a little pricey. And that just means that the other owner probably likes Jadon Blue. And then you just have to live with it and find another, you'll find someone else available.
No, absolutely. John, the other guy that you wanted to mention in this here is Jaheim White, the running back, super explosive running back out of West Virginia as a true freshman there. He's going into his sophomore season. What do you find interesting about him?
Home run hitting ability. I mean, he is, I know it might be, what's the word that my journalism professor told me years ago? I can't remember. When something happens all the time. I forget now. But it's a thunder and lightning backfield with C.J. Donaldson and Jaheim White.
Mm-hmm.
Jaheim White, man, when he gets the ball in space, I just am amazed at his ability to avoid tacklers and take the ball to the house. For some reason, West Virginia was good. And some reason I saw a lot of Garrett Green and Jaheim White late in the season up here. So I saw a lot of West Virginia football. And I was not really tuned into who Jaheim White was in September, early October. But when you look from November on, he is just some logs here that you're like, here's his average yards per rush from the October 28th game against BYU. 9.4, 9.1, 4.3, okay. 9.7, 7.8, 4.2. He had a 75-yard touchdown reception and a 29-yard touchdown reception. He was a true freshman last year. I like Garrett Green. I think this is a sneaky good offense. I think the Mountaineers are better than people are giving them credit for. I don't think their schedule, it's definitely not Georgia Tech or anything like that where I'm really overly concerned about the schedule. There's some bumps in the road, but I think that happens. Every decent team in these conferences will have a few bumps in the road. But my eyeball test tells me, Jared, that he is so explosive. If you scheme him up, I don't want to say, but remember Devin A-Chain last year with the Dolphins? If you scheme this young man up in the right situation where he just has to he's one-on-one with the tackler in space, Jared, he's gone. So, I love him. You just mentioned it with Baxter. He's like my perfect third running back in the flex position. Absolutely love him. And I know there might be some risk because there could be a game where Garrett Green gets 2 rushing touchdowns. C.J. Donaldson gets a rushing touchdown, so you don't get it out of Jaheim White. I get that. But there's also going to be games where he just scores twice from beyond 30 yards. I think he's so explosive. And you have to deal with Garrett Green, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he's a decent thrower of the football. He's very good with his legs. So defenses have to worry about the dual threat quarterback.
No, I agree with pretty much everything you had to say there. Again, I love Jaheim White's explosive ability, right? I think he's, again, straight up just a better running back than C.J. Donaldson because, again, C.J. Donaldson came in as a tight end, switched over to running back, and so he's still playing a little bit out of position. Don't get me wrong. He was very, very good his true freshman year. But, again, White's just a more natural running back out of the two. And I am definitely concerned about C.J. Donaldson coming back healthy this year. I do think that's going to cap White's ceiling just a little bit if they really do try to keep it split between those two guys. I'd rather have White in a best ball format because I do think I think, John, that you kind of mentioned, right, he can score outside the 30 on any given play. Problem is, I don't know which games that's going to come in, right? There's going to be games where White's going to get 15 touches and it's going to be great. There are going to be some games where he's going to get 5. Now, that 5 might be all he needs because he's just that kind of player, but I'm not going to try to rely on that week to week here. So I'm a little, I've taken White kind of similar to Baxter in terms of if something happened to Donaldson and White became the back for West Virginia at some point, it would just be absolutely unstoppable for your college fantasy team, but only in best ball formats. I don't think I've taken him in any true redraft format yet because I'm not going to try to guess which weeks he goes off on. By the way,
I will say this. In a redraft, he's the ultimate patient player. You have to be patient and just put him in the flex, right? You just, I only got 12 points last week, but then he might explode for 30. But he is a patient, I call him patient players.
No, I totally understand that. Before I get to my guys here in this tier, I do want to make a quick correction here. I just realized that Jaden Ott was not on our list of running backs here. And so just to clarify to everybody, he is our number 8 running back. I don't know why he didn't make it into my graphics here or my list here. That is a complete oversight on my point. But before all of y'all go start commenting, where's Jaden Ott? Where's Jaden Ott? That's a goof on my part, everyone. Again, he should be our number 8 running back and probably should have been somebody that we talked about a bit more in depth. But it's all good. I'm sure I'm still going to get 100 comments about where he's at. The 2 running backs in this range that I'm most interested in are Gavin Sawchuk and Ishmael Mahdi. Again, interested in, not in that I draft a ton of them, although I do have a lot of Gavin Sawchuk, but just 2 guys that I think are relatively under-discussed as this offseason has kind of gone along, right? Gavin Sawchuk's an interesting one to me because he finishes the RB 104 last season. He did not get much run until about the second half of the season, which is why he finished so low in terms of total points here. But his last 7 games, he scored 130.5 fantasy points. That's an average of 18.64 points per game. That would have been good for an RB 23 finish on the year. That was when he was actually getting some run. Then if you look at his final 5 games, where he was the clear number 1 back for Oklahoma, he was averaging 21.6 points per game. That would have been good for an RB7 finish last year. The thing that's kind of holding me back a little bit, right, is that typically Oklahoma has tried to go committee over the last couple of years when they could. Last year, again, Sawchuk was kind of clearly their most healthy back. Barnes was doing his own injuries. I don't know what was going on between Tawee Walker and that coaching staff, because Tawee Walker was pretty solid for a bit, and then all of a sudden he just stopped getting the ball. I'm not really sure.
They said bye-bye.
Pretty much. And again, now, granted, they gave Sawchuk the ball, and Sawchuk did his thing. But Tawee Walker's gone. Again, this is kind of my next point. It's like, who is Sawchuk's competition here, right? Because Tawee Walker's gone. Javonte Barnes has been a medical nightmare last couple of years, and as much as the staff seems to believe in him, and it seems like he's going to get some run this year again, you also have Khalib Hicks, who is someone that's been coming along according to camp reports. You also got Taylor Tatum. I don't think he'll get a ton of run his true freshman year, but it kind of sets up to me that like Sawchuk is still clearly the dude here in this backfield, but I can't keep shaking this feeling that this coaching staff wants to have a committee of running backs, right? So again, here as RB13, RB14, if you include Jaden Ott into these rankings, so RB14 with Gavin Sawchuk, your view on him really comes down to 2 beliefs. One, he'll continue at the pace he did to finish last year, in which case he's a massive value in drafts right now. Again, looking at ADP-wise, he's going as RB22, so mid to late 4th round. Very similar to CJ Baxter, where if he continues that pace, excellent 3rd running back for you to grab. Or the Sooners go committee again, just completely kill his value from what we were seeing at the end of last year. So, John, with Gavin Sawchuk, like, how do you kind of feel about him? Which direction do you think it ends up going?
Well, I went back to some tape of Gavin Sawchuk for my Devy study because I had to rank him in my Devy rankings. I do that before I do my college fantasy football, finalize them. And I looked back. He was a 4-star recruit, the number 1 prospect in the state of Colorado, the number 4 running back in the nation as a high schooler. And I was surprised. I did not know he was this big. He's 195 pounds on a 5'11". So he's got really good, like he looks the part of the physical running back. So I was really impressed with him as a prospect. And you mentioned it. He was so good down the stretch. So I had to check out some of his game tape. He looks like your Oklahoma running back. I don't have enough shares of him, and here's the only reason I probably have him lower in my rankings. They have one of the toughest schedules in the country, and they're going into the SEC this year. So I have him I still have him in the top 16, let me think. I think I have him at like 17. I just am a little bit worried about that SEC schedule, and it's not that Oklahoma can't. I think what's being overlooked with Texas and Oklahoma going in the SEC is every week, the competition is so ferocious. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they're ready for that challenge yet. And I didn't say this about Texas because I do think they're a little bit better of a football team than Oklahoma. I don't think they're going to be ready. Every team is going to want to knock off Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC. And I think that's a little bit overlooked. You don't think those teams that have been in the SEC for like 30 years, you think they want Oklahoma and Texas coming in here and dominating? So I think Oklahoma and Texas are going to be a bit surprised at the level of competition and how many of these teams bring their absolute A game every week. So that's my only concern. Will the game script kind of go away from Sawchuk at times?
Well, Sawchuk's a pretty good receiver out of the backfield from what I recall. So, like, I don't think he'll get completely game screwed out. But your point about the schedule is well taken here, right? According to our numbers here at C2C Winning Edge, with our C2C Winning Edge package, Oklahoma has the 10th toughest schedule in the Power 4, right? And they start off pretty well, right? Temple, Houston, Tulane, all right, that's fine. Then you get to Tennessee, at Auburn, Texas, South Carolina. Okay, South Carolina's fine. But at Ole Miss, you get Maine in the middle there for some reason, but then you get at Missouri, Alabama comes to town, and you finish with LSU.
That's a tough.
Christ Almighty. That's a rough. You're right. That is a rough schedule there. And your point about everybody wanting to knock him off is even more well taken because you got idiots like RJ Young out there saying that Oklahoma and Texas are going to be the ones in the SEC championship, and you keep blasting that out. You keep saying that. That. You know for a fact that they're going to be, these players are going to pick up on that kind of stuff, and they're just going to want to beat the crap out of Texas and Oklahoma. So I think your point about that is well taken. The other guy I want to talk about in this range, this is a guy, unlike Gavin Sawchuk, who I actually have a lot of Gavin Sawchuk because of how late he goes. I have almost none of Ishmael Mauti. Finishes the RB 19 for the year last year. At his peak, he was RB 3 on the year through week 6. Then gets a little banged up. He doesn't really miss any games for the most part. Again, it's more of just like they can't give him quite the volume that they're giving him during that kind of early season stretch there. Some things are going well for him, though, right? You expect this offense to be better in 2024, even though they're already pretty good in year one under G.J. Kinney. He should be getting a QB upgrade in Jordan McLeod compared to T.J. Finley here, right? They bring in some backs here that could help kind of spell him from having to have that massive workload, but that's also the double-edged sword here, right? Texas State kind of quietly added 2 pretty productive running backs from another Texas school here in UTEP. They bring in Deion Hankins and Torrance Burgess Jr. These aren't nobodies that they brought in. These were 2 guys that Hankins ran for over 800 yards and 5 touchdowns last year. Burgess ran for over 600 yards and 2 touchdowns last year. Now, granted, they were on UTEP, so like it's not a great offense to begin with, so it's not like they're scored a ton. But even still, that's impressive that on a team like UTEP that was not very good last year, these guys were still cranking out 1,400 yards between the 2 of them. This makes me very concerned, in addition to some kind of wordage used by the staff of wanting to kind of spell Mauti a little bit compared to last year. I do think there's a significant chance that he could underperform his stat line from last year. And I don't think that's really being discussed enough in CFF circles. Because again, Mauti still pretty comfortably being taken as RB14, 2-3 turn there. And I've seen him go as high as early second round in some drafts there. So, John, how do you feel about Ishmael Mauti here and the Texas State running back room?
In an ideal CFF draft, Mauti would be my second running back in the 3rd round pick. I think it's okay there. And I do agree with you. They seem to have brought in talented players to lessen the load. And you had mentioned his stats last year. If you weren't watching Texas State, he had over 1,300 yards rushing, everyone, 10 touchdowns, 20 receptions for 275 yards. You're looking at 243 touches. So I think you kind of alluded to it. That are they going to limit his touches this year? And he is a special teams player. He can return kicks too. So I'm wondering if maybe they bring the touches down to 200, Jared, And if they bring the touches down and he's not as efficient as he was, that will hurt his fantasy ceiling. So I have him at number 14. Hey, third round, and if I went early, let's say I got Luther Burden, and then I got another running back that I really liked, Jaden Ott like you, then I'd probably be okay with Ishmael Mahdi. If he's my first running back, I'd be really concerned if he was my lead back, if I went back-to-back wide receivers.
Yeah, again, like I'm looking at my rankings here. I have Mahdi at 15 as well. So like I'm not completely off of him or anything like that. I just think that this is something that it just kind of feels weird that this hasn't been discussed more in our circles. So I figure this is as good a time of any to kind of really bring this up. Maybe I get a deal out of him in ADP now. Maybe he starts slipping into the 4th round. I'll take him in the 4th round. All right, let's go into this last tier of running backs here. This is RBs 25 through 36 here. Number 25, we have Quinshon Judkins, the transfer running back from Ole Miss going to Ohio State. At number 26, we got Donovan Edwards, the running back out of Michigan. At number 27, we got Dean Connors, the running back out of Rice. Number 28, we got Ches Malusi, the running back out of Wisconsin. Number 29, we got Travion Henderson, the running back out of Ohio State. At number 30, we got Bashal Tutin, the running back out of Virginia Tech. Number 31, we got Abu Sama III, the running back out of Iowa State. At number 23, we got Chip Trayanum, the former running back out of Ohio State and Arizona State, now headed to Kentucky. At number 33, we got TJ Harden, the running back out of UCLA. At number 34, we got Jalen Buckley, the running back out of Western Michigan. Number 35, we got Jaquavius Marks, the former running back out of Mississippi State, now headed over to Lincoln Riley and the USC Trojans. And at number 36, we got Ricky Hunt, the running back out of Ohio. So, John, your two guys that you've kind of named as the guys you want to talk about the most in this tier are Bashal Tutin and Abu Sama. Why don't you start us off with Tutin there out of Virginia Tech?
I just looked at him and that Virginia Tech schedule and the amount. I believe they have 10 starters on offense coming back, and their defense is loaded also. And those are really good kind of flags for future success as a team. And I don't think that ACC schedule, I mean, Clemson has still got questions, right? North Carolina, it seems like their entire team, except for Marion Hampton, left the program. They're almost brand new. Florida State, I think I saw they have 2 starters on offense coming back. They basically have a brand new team. So I mentioned that because I like the schedule and the way the ACC could play out for Virginia Tech. And when I went back, I actually didn't realize I had him on some DFS teams last year, DFS rosters, and I think I have him in some flex positions because he was a waiver wire pickup last year. I didn't realize he had 12 touchdowns last year. He had 27 receptions for 293 yards and 863 yards rushing. I like the way this young man runs. I like the way he plays. I know Kyron Drones, some people might be concerned with the touchdowns going to Drones, and I think Drones will get his touchdowns. But I can't believe I'm going to say this. I think there's enough touchdowns in this offense that both of these young men, Tutin and Drones, can do very well. And I don't even have to project Tutin for like 18 touchdowns. If we go from 12 to 15, hey, I'm very happy with the running back with 15 touchdowns. And I don't think he started the season as the starter. So if we get, the first game he had 19. Oh, he did have 19 carries against Old Dominion. And then, so a couple of games in it, but maybe he gets 30 receptions this year. So I like Tutin. I think he's very nice value in CFF drafts.
Yeah, he finishes the RB 41 in drafts last year. And you kind of alluded to there, Laub. We can't fully go with he wasn't the starter to start the season, so therefore we can double his numbers or whatever we need to do, or get him to 12 games and everything like that. He should be able to repeat what he did last year, and that makes it one of the best floor running backs that you can kind of get right now, right? Because last year, with the offense, again, not that it was a bad offense or anything like that, but we all expect Virginia Tech's offense to be better this year. He was able to be RB 41 out of that. I can easily see him getting here to RB30 range. Because like you said, John, if he goes from 12 touchdowns to 15, that adds 18 points onto what he did last year. So you're looking at him suddenly jumping up to RB32 last year. Again, he only got 800 yards last year. So let's say he reaches 1,000 yards this year. So that's what another 14 points on top of that. Like, you're looking at him suddenly getting into the RB, let's see here, probably like RB 25, 27 range. Like,
that's a number 2 running back you're getting as your third.
Exactly. And based on what we can tell with Virginia Tech, right, it's going to be pretty consistent. Like you mentioned, the schedule, there's not really a ton of ups and downs in terms of who they face on a weekly basis. You're not having to kind of bring him out of your lineup, put him back into your lineup, things like that. He can be a guy that you can plug into your number 2 spot a good chunk of weeks. I do think Tootin is I don't want to say undervalued, because I think he's ranked right where he's going. But, a lot of people will see Tootin come off the board and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. It's kind of like, I think people should be more excited when they go to draft Tootin, in addition to the fact that whenever he does do something good, you can tell your opponent that week that you are rooting in Tootin. So,
you know what Tootin reminds me of? My grandmother loved vanilla ice cream, and I didn't like it as a kid. I wanted my chocolate, right, with sprinkles. But now that I'm an old man, I like the vanilla ice cream. And I think there's nothing wrong with vanilla ice cream. My grandma was right. And I think that's what Tootin is. He's just a really good vanilla ice cream. And I'll take that any day.
I agree 100%. I don't want to say he's the opposite of Tootin, because I understand how he can be a safe pick. But Abu Sama here, man, you want to talk about up and down, like the highest of highs and lowest of low performances last year as a true freshman for Iowa State. He was pretty up and down there. John, you identified as one of the guys that you wanted to talk about here. So talk to me about Abu Sama.
Yes, I think you have to be comfortable looking at his box scores and understanding that he was a true freshman last year. And what Jared is in reference to, against Ohio, 3 carries -5 yards. That's not good, folks. And then you had a game against Baylor, 3 carries, 21 yards. That's not good, folks. But here, let me see the other side. 16 carries, 276 yards, and 3 touchdowns against Kansas State. Then against BYU, 8 carries, 110 yards, 2 touchdowns. What we have is a very inconsistent young man who was a freshman last year.
Mm-hmm.
I like this Iowa State offense in this new Big 12. I think they have a lot of really nice pieces with Rocco Beck and Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. And then you put Abu Sama in here. And if people aren't as diehard as Jared and myself, they had Breece Hall, Iowa State, who they fed him consistently. And why can't I remember the other very great Ohio State
David Montgomery?
Which one?
David Montgomery.
David Montgomery. Excellent. You're right. So they do want to feed Matt Campbell in this offense. They want to feed the running back. They're not PJ Fleckish. Let's just put it that way. But given he matures, he gets better at grasping the offense, and I think they want a lot of 2 and 3 yard carries. Let's say he gets better at taking what the defense gives him or what the offensive line blocks. I'm projecting Samu at 20 touches a game, and I think that's a pretty explosive offense. So I like Samu, but you have to look at the box score and understand in context, right? We don't talk about context enough. In context, he has a wide range of outcomes for the Cyclones and CFF managers.
Yeah, and everything you said is true 100%. He's actually very similar to CJ Baxter in that way, right? Where, again, you can write off a lot of this as like he's a freshman, right? There's a lot still to learn here, but he showed enough flashes that we can look at what he can be in the future here, right? My only thing is that yes, he had two incredible performances there at the end against BYU and Kansas State. Just awesome. Everything you want in a college fantasy running back there. But in between those games, you have the 11 yards versus Texas.
Oh, there's some.
And then against Memphis in the bowl game, 12 carries for 4 yards. They're scary looking numbers. There's no doubt about that, which is why I haven't really gone a ton towards Abu Sama. I've also gotten burned at chasing Iowa State running backs in the past, like going after Jared Brock, Cartavius Norton last year. So I'm a little hurt by this backfield over the last couple of years. But here's the thing that Abu Sama did that neither Jared Brock or Cartavius Norton could do, and that was chase away the competition. That's the one
they're
thing.
Gone. There's no one left, right? Yeah. Basically.
Eli Sanders and Cartavius Norton, the two other top backs from last year, they're gone. They transferred out. And now they bring in Jalen Jackson, so there'll be somebody there to kind of spell him. But you can tell because, like, based on Norton and Sanders' reaction there, they know. They know it's the Abu Sama show moving forward. And again, we'll see if Abu Sama improves from last year. Again, if he does, you're probably got one of the highest upside running backs in the draft here. But, you know, I think he's definitely one of the more interesting guys in this range.
Jared, and I think they didn't bring in a running back. He chased guys out, and the coaching staff didn't really.
They brought in Jalen Jackson from Eastern Michigan.
So
a MAC running back.
Yeah, it's a MAC running, right? So that sometimes the coaching staff tells you things, right? Like, it's not like they were going in, and I didn't hear any rumors or message boards. They were looking to get a running back in the portal. So when the coaching staff says, we kind of like this young man, and the other players knew it, that's why he said they chased him out of the locker room.
Pretty much. All right. We'll go with my two guys in this range. And I'll try to be quick about this because we are running slightly long. We still got a lot to talk about. So, two guys in this range for me. TreVeyon Henderson, again, there at RB29. And then Chip Trayanum, the former Ohio State running back, going to Kentucky here. I'll start with TreVeyon here. TreVeyon, obviously, was fantastic his freshman year. Finished in the top 10 of CFF running backs as a true freshman. Completely disappointed the next year. Injury-riddled. Finished, I think, 130-plus. In running backs, again, just a very disappointing year. Comes back last year and is off to a really good start. Gets kind of banged up again around the middle of the season. Comes back, finishes the season, finishes at RB40. So very much like in between the high of his first year, the low of his second year. Kind of finished in the middle here this year. Are we sure that Henderson isn't locked in to be the RB1 at Ohio State this year? We have seen Quinshon Judkins pretty much be drafted ahead of TreVeyon Henderson pretty much all year long. And to me, the more I think about it, the more I think that this doesn't make sense. You don't convince a guy like TreVeyon Henderson, who was set to be the number one running back off the board for the NFL last year, to come back with a pitch of this. Hey, Trey, come back for another year. Well, we'll put more wear and tear on your body while making far less money than you would in the NFL. And oh, by the way, we're going to grab somebody out of the portal. In fact, he's one of the best running backs in the country and relegate you to RB2. So you cool with coming back for another year? There's no way that was the pitch. There was no way that's the pitch. TreVeyon, I think, is set to be the RB1 here. Quinshon Judkins, the younger guy of the two, is set to be your... Actually, no, I might be wrong on that. I think they're the same class. I'm done about that. Regardless, TreVeyon from day one was the higher rated back out of the two. He is the guy that's been with Ohio State for 3 years, or this is now, going into his third year now with the Buckeyes, right? He knows the system better. I would be honestly shocked at this point if Henderson's not the number one guy. In addition to the fact that, again, rumors are rumors, but it sounds like Quinshon was not exactly the best teammate over at Ole Miss that final year. And so, like, maybe that changes when he gets to Ohio State, but if it doesn't, like, Henderson's still going to be the guy the staff's probably going to rely on a little bit more than him. I'm not trying to make a prediction of, Henderson's going to be the workhorse back. Judkins is going to be relegated to massively smaller than what he was last year. I think they'll both get theirs because of the Chip Kelly offense, right? But Henderson's going, according to ADP, about 2 rounds apart. I've seen a gap as high as 5-6 rounds between Quinshon Judkins and TreVeyon Henderson. I've seen Henderson almost always go after Judkins, and I think it's about time we start just kind of putting a nip in this bud and saying that Henderson probably should be being taken ahead of Quinshon Judkins. Am I going off base there, John?
I'm just going to say this. I have 0 shares of Quinshon Judkins in any of my drafts. I have 7 shares of Trevion Henderson.
All right, so we on the same
He's
page.
become to me the absolute value in the draft, especially in best ball leagues when I don't have to predict any outcome. I also believe coaching staffs are loyal to young men who have helped them. There's no way Ryan Day doesn't appreciate Trevion Henderson's talent and what he's done for the Buckeyes. So you're right. It was not, hey, do you mind if you sit the bench and come back one more year? It was, son, don't worry about Judkins. You're our guy. What I want is depth at the position, and I think Judkins is the hammer. Let Trevion go crazy in the first half, maybe even to the third quarter. Buckeyes get there. Their schedule isn't always the most intimidating, right? Early in the season. Then you bring in Judkins in the third quarter and you give him 20 carries to close, like that. And if they're going to score 28 points with Henderson on the field, he's going to be productive. Jared, I couldn't agree with you more. I've actually had him I need a receiver. I'm in round 8, but Trevion Henderson's on the board. I'm sorry. I'm just going to take my 4th running back or 5th running back. I don't care, especially in best ball, when I don't have to predict anything.
Now, I'm also, again, if you look at my rankings, right, I still actually have Judkins ahead of Trevion. I sound hypocritical.
Yeah, me
if you look
too.
at that. But at the same time, I think I need to change that at this point. I'm kind of really getting convicted. I'm really kind of getting convicted on this take of Henderson probably, I would say, is probably the safer bet out of the two right now. The main thing is Judkins doesn't have the injury history that Henderson had. Henderson got hurt this past year, and Henderson missed a good chunk of 2022, right? So you're thinking that there, right? But in addition, right, it's just Ohio State in general, right? They hold out their players if they're banged up. They're going for a national championship this year. And that's why I have all Ohio State players kind of ranked lower than I would. They've gotten lower and lower every year, despite the fact that they're usually an offense that scores 40 points a game, because I know for a fact the moment they get banged up, Ryan Day's going to hold them out as long as possible because they know they can beat most people on their schedule even without their stars. And they're going to save them for the playoffs, especially in a 12-team format where you have to, if you get in without a bye, you have to play 3-4 games. I can't remember the number off the top of my head. They got, with 12-teamers, yeah, you're going to have to play 4 games if you're on the outside there to win the national championship. And that's a much longer stretch than you would have had to in the past couple of years. So they're going to probably even be more conservative with their guys moving forward.
You made me think a lot, Jared. I just look quickly here. I have Judkins at 26, and I have Henderson at 31. So I have a much closer in my rankings than ADP. And when I'm, me, I like to have my sheet. I cross off players. And what happens is by the 8th or 9th round, I'm looking and there's Henderson just sitting there when the top 50 backs are off the board. So I keep getting them.
Yeah, I have Judkins at RB 34 and Henderson at RB 40 for me.
There you go.
I'm similar distance apart. I just have Ohio State players in general lower than you.
But the ADP gap does not warrant that.
Yeah, I think it's not actually as huge as you think it is because again, we're looking at Judkins is RB 23. Henderson, according to my ADP, has him at RB 30. But again, I've seen him go even later than that. His ADP varies wildly between guys who love him and groups of people who do not. Other running back here that I had in this tier, Chip Trayanum. We as CFF players have been waiting for years for Trayanum to finally get his chance. It really all started back when Trayanum first went to Arizona State, back when Herm Edwards was head coach there. Edwards was coming off back-to-back seasons where Eno Benjamin was going 100 or 1,000 plus yards. His first 2 seasons, it looked like the next great CFF running back system. You just grab the next guy up there. Trayanum looked great early on. But then after 2 years, Traynham transfers out, and we're like, okay, maybe he lands somewhere really nice. Well, he goes to Ohio State, where they're already loaded at running back, and then he transitions to linebacker. So it looked like the dream was kind of dead there for a minute, but it got revived again last year when Chip was called upon last season after Travion went down with injury. And for some reason, that staff didn't want to rely on Dallin Hayden there. And so they switched Chip back to running back. And it looks like now Chip's back full-time at running back. He transfers out and he goes to Kentucky, who just gave us a top 5 running back in Ray Davis. The expectation that Chip will be the RB1 there. So, John, I'll ask you, do you think CFF players are finally going to get the season they expected out of Chip since his early days?
I hope so, because I really would like to see this young man be successful. I think I've only taken him in one draft because the value was there for me. And everything you said is 100% correct. The system is there. We know the touches should be there. For some reason, I'm just not as in on him. Like, I think when you play as many leagues as we do, you tend to have gentlemen who you like more than others. Mm-hmm. I see the ceiling. If you told me right now that Chip Traynham was going to get 22 carries every game for the Wildcats, I would be 100% in. I'm just not 100% sure. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's my blind spot in this player. But I think everything else tells us that you should be drafting him. And I'm trying to find his ADP. I couldn't find it on my board.
I got it here. RB 37 in drafts, 91.7. So you're looking at the 8th round, typically.
Yeah, which is I would say that's more than fair value. But I'm also in drafts. It seems like he goes a little bit earlier because I'm with experts in general. I know it's different when you draft out of non-experts. So he does seem to be going a little earlier than I'm comfortable with in the draft, most of my drafts.
No, and there's some things that are concerning here, right? I think they bring in Chip, but
yes,
there's a lot of rumblings about a certain true freshman there in Jason Patterson. Yeah. You got Kavasier Smoke, who's been with the program for a while. And I don't think they ever really expect him to be a main guy, but he'll probably be a guy that could threaten the rotation there. And then, too, again, I mentioned earlier when we talked Penny Boone, they tried to bring in Penny Boone. So clearly they weren't super happy with what they were kind of getting outside of the spring with that running back room. So I definitely think, again, you can't expect Ray Davis again here with Kentucky. But if, like you said, John, if he gets 20 touches a game with Kentucky, a system that loves to run the ball, I mean, shoot, Chris Rodriguez was basically locked in for RB 30 2 years in a row there at Kentucky. Yeah. I think you can relatively expect that. All right. Let's keep it moving here, John. We're going to talk a couple of running backs that we think are being drafted too high. We each kind of put down 3 names here. John, we did kind of touch on one of your guys already with the Travion conversation here. But I'm going to run through my 3 guys here real quick, and then I'll let you respond to each of those guys, and then I'll let you have your turn there. I'll start with Jonah Coleman. Is one of my running backs I think is going way too high. I have him as RB 57. ADP has him at RB 39. I'm honestly about to drop him even lower than RB 57. All offseason, this deal with Jonah Coleman's kind of felt like very heavy projection. Many, including myself, just kind of assumed that Coleman would follow Fish. Things would pick up right where they left off last year. But a couple of things have kind of happened since then that have kind of cleared up how I feel about him. One, assuming things do kind of pick up where they left off, Coleman was RB 49 in 2023, being the number 1 back for Arizona last year, and nothing has indicated that he'll really improve on that. If anything, there are actually things that are going to tell me he's going to finish lower than that. One, reports about Coleman this offseason have not been glowing. There's been a lot of kind of hints about him being overweight for camp, him not being quite as explosive as he was. In addition, Coleman's walking into a room that still has Cam Davis there at Washington, and he is a solid veteran for that program. He's been with Washington forever. Yeah, obviously Coleman's coming in with Fish. He knows Fish's system well, but Cam Davis is a veteran for that program, so I do think that's going to matter here. In addition, Coleman wasn't the only back that followed Fish to Washington. True freshman Adam Muhammad, a favorite of Nate Marquise, did as well, and from camp reports, it sounds like Muhammad is probably one of the more impressive guys in that back room right now. And again, not a lot of mention of Coleman here. Speaking of mentions here, 247's done a great job over the last couple of days as fall camps begin, kind of giving really detailed reports about what's going on here. And all I see is a ton of rotation between these backs, and I smell committee here. In day 2, we had both Cameron Davis and Sam Adams, whoever that is, got most of the first team reps, with Jonah Coleman and Adam Muhammad also getting reps with the first team sometimes, but clearly it's based on this wordage, they were kind of a tier behind. Day 3, there was a rotation between Jonah Coleman, Cameron Davis, and Adam Muhammad with the first team. Sam Adams kind of getting that rotated in a little bit. Regardless, Coleman's not separating himself from anybody here. In addition to all of that, Washington's going to struggle this year. They're dead last in returning production among all teams in the FBS, not just the Power 4, all teams in the FBS. They're going to be game scripted away from the running game, and Jonah Coleman can catch the ball, but it's not his MO. And so I'm going to say I'm out on Jonah Coleman. I think he's going way too high. My next guy here, Marquez Cooper, running back out of San Diego State, formerly of Kent State and Ball State there. Reuniting with Sean Lewis. I do think this is the best case scenario that you could possibly have gotten from Marquez Cooper's transfer. But I think people are going crazy with this a little bit. His ADP is at RB 35 right now. I got him at RB 53. As much as people want to assume that Sean Lewis and Cooper being back together means they'll pick right back off where they left off at Kent State, I think that's a little bit of a dangerous game to play, especially when you're drafting him, according to ADP here, as your third RB off the board. So a guy that you expect to start weekly here. Cooper wasn't there during the spring, and while he does know this offense pretty well, I do think that puts him at somewhat of a disadvantage here. In addition, we did get a depth chart out of Mountain West Media Days from San Diego State that had Keenan Christon and Marquez Cooper listed as co-starters. Now, this depth chart might end up being worth less than a used piece of toilet paper, but I do think it speaks to the fact that the staff does like Christon as well, right? This is a guy that performed well for San Diego State last year, as much as his program is kind of falling apart. In addition to all of that, let's not forget that outside of the years where Cooper was the main back for Kent State, Lewis heavily preferred committee approaches at running back. And when you have a running back room here that returns its top 4 running backs from last year, none of them transferred out outside of one guy, Martin Blake. You have to think with all that returning production, he's kind of tempted to go with that committee approach, even if Cooper does remain at the top. I think there's a lot more risk than people are baking in here, drafting Cooper at RB 35. And last but not least, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one because I'm a little hesitant to say that I think he's going that much high because I have him at RB 48. He's RB 36 in ADP, so I'm not that far off on him. But it's Nick Singleton, the running back out of Penn State. He finished as RB 56 last year. Rough year 2. Just got straight up outperformed by Keyshawn Allen last year. Allen was going 5.2 yards per carry. Singleton stuck at 4.4. They do bring in a new offensive coordinator from Kansas. A obviously great running system there with Andy Koltonicki, the offensive coordinator from Kansas. Before that, he was at Buffalo. So if you love those running backs back when they were great, you know how exciting this can definitely be. But the problem with Singleton for me is that it wasn't scheme that was holding him back. It was himself. Penn State ran the ball over 500 times last year, and Allen and Singleton both got a third of the carries. They got equal opportunity there, and Singleton just kind of straight up struggled last year. And if Koltonicki's scheme does kind of improve for one of these running backs to be a CFF powerhouse this year, I don't think it's outside the possibility that Keyshawn Allen might be that guy instead if he continues to outperform Singleton here. And the ADP just doesn't reflect that. Singleton's going as RB 36. He's in the 8th round there. Allen's going as RB 66, 16th round. I'd probably 10 out of 10 times right now would rather have Allen in the 16th round than Singleton in the 8th. So, John, those are my 3 guys I think are going too high. Again, just recap for everybody after all my ranting there. Jonah Coleman, Marquez Cooper, and Nick Singleton are the 3 guys I think are going too high. John, what do you think about those 3 guys? Am I wrong on any of them?
I don't think you're wrong on Coleman and Cooper whatsoever. I think I have, I was trying to look quickly. I have Cooper at 79, and I have Jonah. Why can't I find Coleman all of a sudden? I think I have him like around 60. So I agree with you on that. And I lost too many players. I think Washington's offensive line, they lost both guards. I think the offensive line is decimated.
They don't have a single offensive lineman returning, I don't think.
Yeah, that's not good. So I'm very worried about that. Now, Singleton is interested. I agree with you. I have a lot more Natron Allen because of value, especially in best ball leagues, because there will be a game, like I think last year he had 3 touchdowns in one game, and he ended up with a really nice outing. And Allen had some more productive fantasy games than you might think because you didn't, and in best ball, I don't have to predict them. But I do think Singleton is still coming at a decent value. If he's your 4th or 5th running back, Jared, which I've gotten him a few times, I have no problem with Singleton as my 4th running back. Just what if Allen gets hurt? Like injuries. So there is some upside there. But I don't disagree. It's not like I have a ton of Singleton. I actually think I have a very shallow keeper league. So I had only 3 keepers, and I put Singleton back into the pool because I liked other players I had. So there's definitely some concern about that there. My 3, I don't understand the Donovan Edwards. And this might be strange. Anyone knows me. I'm a Michigan guy. I've probably seen at least 75% of Donovan Edwards games. Yes, there are flashes of brilliance. Jared, sometimes I just think he doesn't even, I think his vision is way below average. Like maybe I'm an NFL grader and I'm looking at it from a different way. But man, I see him just running up people's buttocks and not being able to find the hole. And that's why Corum was so good.
Have we gotten Edwards sight tested? Is he supposed to be wearing glasses out there?
I swear, I think his vision's really bad for what I would consider an NFL back. Also, I think there's too many changes at Michigan. I mean, I'm a believer in returning production. I'm a believer in offensive linemen returning. They're decimated. There's a new coach. There are so many variables that you have to account for with the ranking of Donovan Edwards. I'm surprised at how early he's going. I honestly, Jared, I don't have one share, and I'm a Michigan guy. Also, you've probably heard this. There's some chirpings about Khalil Mullins.
Oh, yeah.
If you go to the Michigan message boards, you'll hear some Mullins chatting out there. And Mullins might actually be a better between the tackles runner. And if that's true, that caps Donovan Edwards' upside tremendously. So I'm very, very out on Donovan Edwards. We talked about, I just don't understand. I don't see how Quinshon Judkins gets the touches to warrant where he's going. I just don't understand. I don't have any of Judkins either. And TJ Harden, I think he's a talent. But man, UCLA might be one of the worst teams in the nation. I mean, they're going to the Big Ten. I don't see the quarterback. I know some people like Michael J. Sturdivant, but he's never become the guy. I don't like that offensive lineman without Kelly coaching it. I think the game script and the fact they might win 3 games, I'm not touching Harden.
The only thing I'll say about Donovan Edwards, because you touched on everything else, John, is I don't know why you're so down on him. He was clearly the cover athlete for CFP 25. I mean, that clearly means that he's going to be an absolute beast. I don't know what you're worried about there. I still can't believe they did that. I
can't believe. Oh my God, Jared! I could go. I'm stunned. I would not have even thought about it, Jared. But I was stunned.
I get it. If you need to have an athlete on the cover from last year's national championship.
That's the problem.
Cool. But that's fine. I get that line thinking. Put Will Johnson on the cover. He's the highest rated player in the game.
He's a top. Other than Travis Hunter, he's the best cornerback in the NFL draft.
So, he's good. Put him on the cover. I would have totally been cool with that because he's a legit talent. Again, I very much question Donovan Edwards' Devy upside and everything like that. So, yeah. Judkins, we already covered there. I'm not going to say much more there. It hurts my heart to talk bad about TJ Harden. I've been so big on TJ Harden since the day he was there. And you're right. There are things here that are just not going Harden's way. I still think he'll be the main back for this offense. I know some people are kind of big on Keegan Jones, but Keegan Jones is a smaller change of pace back. He's not going to be the main guy that gets thrown up between the tackles 20 times a game. That's still going to be Harden at the end of the day. Problem is, I'm looking at our numbers from C2C Winning Edge here, and you're right about the schedule. Third toughest in the Power Four here. Again, it starts off nice at Hawaii, Indiana home. Then you get at LSU, Oregon comes to town. You go on the road to Penn State. Get Minnesota at home, but that's going to be a low-scoring game. You go on the road to Rutgers. They're going to have a good defense. At Nebraska, one of your easier games probably, but that's on the road. Iowa comes home. On the road to Washington, you get USC at home, and then Fresno State. Fresno State's a nice way to end the season, I'll say that much, but
if he makes it there, I mean, that schedule is brutal.
That is a brutal middle of the season stretch right there. So I'm not going to fight too much on Harden. I'm again, you talked about it. He's a talent. I like the talent.
Yes.
I'm gonna say he's the best player on that offense, and if that coaching staff is smart, they're going to get him as many touches as possible because that's the best way they can win games. But I totally get it. Let's talk about some guys who are being ranked too low, John. Let's go positive now. Let's stop talking down to these guys. I'm going to start with one guy that's going like almost at the end of drafts that I think should be going more in the middle of drafts. It's going to kind of sound weird here a little bit. But I'll start with Dylan Carson, the super back out of Air Force. And the reason why I say super back is because that's literally what they call their number one back at Air Force there. And the last couple of years have been clear why you need to target this position, right? Emmanuel Michel was RB19 through week 5 last year, fell off a bit as Air Force really struggled down the stretch. And then he was injured to finish the year, missing the whole 3 games and most of another. So he really only played 8 games last year. So he didn't finish super well. I think he was outside the top 100. But regardless, when you had him and he was healthy, he was getting you 30 points a game. And then things kind of fell apart for Air Force. The years before that, though, Brad Roberts, 2022, 345 touches, 1,700 yards, 17 touchdowns. The year before that, 300 touches, 1,356 yards, and 13 touchdowns. Like, if you know who this super back's going to be for Air Force, it's probably a guy that you want to target. Probably the only triple option position that you ever really want to target among any of the academy schools. And all indications are that Carson will be that in that fullback position. While we've been lied to before by the Arizona Air Force beat, I think this is a position with just too much upside to ignore. And just on top of everything else, like Carson was really good last year. He averaged over 7 yards a carry. That's pretty dang good for a Air Force running back. And so I'm just going to bet on the talent. What I've seen so far, I think I'll trust the beat writers are telling me the truth here that he'll be the guy, and we'll move on. Again, I have him as RB51. He's RB111 in drafts right now. So I'm just saying,
he's free. It's a
no-brainer. Go get him.
Yes, you could cut him in 2 weeks if he doesn't get the touches. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Costs you nothing.
Exactly. 2 guys are going a little bit higher here that I'm pretty big on. Corey Kiner at Cincinnati. I got him ranked as RB38. ADP has him at RB48. He was RB71 last year, did reach 1,000 yards on 192 touches and 5 touchdowns. This offense struggled last year in year 1 under Satterfield. They finished 109th in the nation in points per game. This is what led Kiner to only having 5 touchdowns despite having almost 1,100 yards last year. If you're a believer in me, like me in touchdown regressions, Kiner is a huge candidate for that. He should be looking at 10, 11 touchdowns compared to last year, and that'll bump him up greatly in the finishing rankings. I'm also just expecting a year 2 jump for this offense. And while Brennan Sorsby can run, I don't think he's going to have as many designed runs as Emory Jones did, which means more handoffs to a guy like Kiner. In addition, according to our CFF guide and our C2C winning edge numbers, I've mentioned this multiple times. Again, another reason why you should go get the guide. Cincinnati has the 6th easiest schedule in all of the Power 4, so I think it really sets up Cincinnati to have a big jump in offensive production this year, and Kiner should be a huge beneficiary of that. Last guy that I'll pump up here, Marion Lukes. Talked about him a little bit earlier this offseason. I got him as RB41. His ADP is RB54. He finished as RB62 last year. I think people forget just really how good of a finish he had this last season. Last 5 games, he averaged 18.88 fantasy points per game. That's good for a pace that would have earned him RB 22 last year. And now some people might say, like, oh, Miles Bailey's still around. That's going to obviously cap his ceiling. Well, Luke's performance down the stretch really fell off, and the staff realized that they couldn't rely on Bailey, so they relied on Luke's a lot more, and Bailey faded. Luke's ascended. I have a feeling that we're probably going to see that kind of continue here as this season gets started. In addition, the loss of the quarterback Jace Bauer could end up being huge for Marion Lukes. Marion Lukes only had, I think, 5 touchdowns last year. Bauer had 10. And if Bert Emanuel loses this job for whatever reason, either in the fall or sometime during the season because he can't pass worth a damn, and Joe Labus wins the job, who he is not a rushing quarterback, nothing to the degree that Bauer or Bert Emanuel were, that opens up a ton of opportunities for Lukes to score even more. And I think he's coming at an excellent discount here. And, we all love a little action running back. So I think Lukes is one of the more underrated guys in the MAC right now. So, John, quick comments on any of those three, and then you can hop on over to your guys.
I actually love all three. I think Carson's a no-brainer because, I have a little place in my heart for the service academies. I used to love the quarterback at Navy. Oh, there were some delicious years from the Navy quarterback. And my former partner, Justin Heise, used to say he loves greedy quarterbacks at the goal line. And Navy used to be that. And Air Force loves to feed that super back at the goal line, right? I mean, if Carson's the guy, he could have 15 to 20 touchdowns in that offense. Completely agree with you with Kiner. Touchdowns are fickle. That offense, 4th easiest schedule in the P4. They're just telling you that this is going to be a much improved offense. They should be a better football team, Cincinnati, and Kiner's the guy. And Lukes might be the best running back in the MAC. I mean, the MAC isn't what it used to be. Unfortunately, last year it wasn't as good. Hopefully we'll return to some MACtion as we used to love. But Lukes, I like Lukes too, especially at the value. The ceiling is very high. And I guess I should have gone a little deeper, but I just kind of like, these are guys who I've gotten a lot of, and I find them kind of falling. And one is Jordan James, and people know Jordan James. I'm not saying you don't, because if you're listening to Jared and I, you probably love CFF and you've heard him on others. But I just think the ceiling in that Oregon offense is so high with Jordan James. I really like the tape. I like the offensive line. I know they're losing their All-American center, but they did bring in Dylan Gabriel. I'm not worried about the passing game or the offensive line. I think Jordan James is going to be very important considering the move to the Big 12, the Big 10. I think they're going to have to run the football a little bit more than they're used to. So I like James there. He's very underrated in the passing game. I don't think he's given enough credit for that. Plus, they know how to get their backs in space. So I've been getting a lot of Jordan James in the 3rd round. If he goes to you there, I think that's an absolute steal. I do like him in the 2nd round, but man, I have him on teams where I've started with 3 running backs, and he's my 3rd running back. I just like James a lot. I love the ceiling. And I couldn't believe, I liked Sampson before, but then I did some research, and I can't be the only one. I knew Tennessee was underrated running the football. So I knew that. But then I looked at the numbers, and I don't think people realize how good Tennessee is at running the football. Now, part of it is they have the quarterbacks with Hooker, and even last year, the big-armed young man.
Joe Milton.
What?
Joe Milton.
That's it, Joe Milton. So the numbers have quarterbacks in them. But in the last 3 years under Heupel, they finished 11th, 26th, and 10th in the nation in running the football. Touchdowns, rushing, 30, 40, and 23. I could make the argument that Dylan Sampson is the best running back that Josh Heupel's ever had. And I like Jalen Wright, but I do think Dylan Sampson's better. I mean, I looked at him from some Devy angles. I think Sampson's a more complete back between the tackles. I think he has a little bit better vision. I think this young man might have 1,400 yards in the outcome possibilities. And I think right now he's by far. So last year they had a committee backfield. Sampson should get 65% of the touches. If I'm looking at this offensive, if I'm looking at the backfield, he seems like he's going to be the guy. So I like Dylan Sampson a ton. And I have a current ADP of 117. That's just, to me, outside the top 100. Screams, please grab me, take me. And Cameron Cook. I know you've mentioned it, Jared, because you listen, both of us listen to podcasts. We listen to conference-specific, team-specific, message boards, Twitter, X. How much is the chirping around Cameron Cook? Regardless if you've got your eyeball. What?
It's beyond chirping.
It is. I mean, you can't go anywhere near TCU message boards or anything. They're talking about Cameron Cook. Mm-hmm. And I hear the coach talk about him, the fans talk about him, the scouts talk about him. The drum beat's just too loud, Jared. Like, it's screaming that he's going to get 225 carries or more. I like Cameron Cook too.
I like all three of these guys for the most part. Probably the only one I might disagree with you slightly is Jordan James. I think I have him, let's see. I have him ranked as my RB 19. Yeah, RB 19. Okay. His ADP is RB 13. I think consensus-wise, I forget where we had him ranked. But regardless, my main thing there is that Bucky Irving finished as well as he did last year on high efficiency, and Jordan James had high efficiency too. There's no doubt about that as well. Problem is Noah Whittington comes back, and I do think that's going to be a bit of a bigger thorn in James's side than I think we're kind of letting on. In addition, the staff seems to like the FCS transfer. They brought in Jay Harris as well as kind of a change of pace back there. So I think I'm just a little bit more concerned there might be a bit of more of a committee situation there. In addition to the fact they're not playing in the Pac-12 anymore. They're going to the Big Ten. There's not going to be nearly as many shootouts as we saw in the past, but we also know Dan Lanning, even if they are even if they're on a blowout or something like that, he's not afraid to keep his guys in there until midway through the fourth quarter. He keeps them in
there. He does, which was good for me with Bo Nix. I was happy with that.
Love the calls on Dylan Sampson and Cam Cook. And here's the thing: as we get closer into this fall camp, Tennessee's RB2, Cam Seldon, who a lot of people liked last year, it sounds like this shoulder injury is a bit more serious than they were kind of initially letting on. And there's nobody in that room outside of true freshman Peyton Lewis in that backfield. Sam's is going to get a lot more carries than we've typically seen a Tennessee running back if Seldon does not heal up quickly or Lewis doesn't make a massive change here or massive shift upwards here. I think Sampson's a great pick right now at his current value. And some people are like, oh, we haven't seen it yet. Well, we've seen it, what it looks like when the staff does trust him, right?
Yes.
Last year against UTSA, 11 carries, 139 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, it's UTSA. Against Virginia, 13 carries, 52 yards, 3 touchdowns. Against Kentucky, 17 carries, 76 yards, and a touchdown. And then against Iowa, 20 carries, 133 yards there. This dude just is explosive. He is a really good running back. I love Sampson. And then Cam Cook, man. You basically said everything already. The drum beat's too loud. And Sonny Dykes has given us great running backs the last couple of years. Amani Bailey, RB30 last year. Kendre Miller, year before, RB18. I see no reason why Cam Cook can't be that next in line right there. And even if you're like, oh, but like there's some risk there because we haven't seen it yet, you're right. We have almost nothing on Cam Cook right now. His ADP's RB53. I'm willing to take the risk at that point.
Oh, absolutely. He's a value. I mean, at 53, if he's your 5th running back, oh my God, are you happy?
Alrighty. Last thing we're going to cover here, John, we're going to talk about some competitions that we're keeping our eye on here during fall camps. Again, a lot of pretty much every team's fall camp has gotten started at this point. And so we've labeled 2 teams here that we are the most interested in. You have the Alabama Crimson Tide's running back room here between Justice Haynes and Jim Miller, your most interested competition that you're looking at. So why don't you tell the people about what you're looking for there?
Well, we have a change at the coaching staff with Kalen DeBoer coming in. And we've loved Alabama running backs in CFF for, under Saban's tenure, no question about it. And I do think Justice Haynes is the guy. I have Haynes grade or ranked higher than Jam Miller, but there are definitely Jam Miller fanatics out there and people pushing Jam Miller. I guess if I'm drafting one that has been Justice Haynes right now, and maybe I don't even think Jam Miller's being drafted in every CFF draft. I should look at what his percentage ownership is on Fantrax. It's probably not as high as one would think, so he might be a waiver wire guy, or unless we get more clear news down the stretch. But man, if you could tell me which one of these two backs will get 200 carries, I would probably have him in the top 35, right around there.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I just don't know. I think it's Justice Haynes, but I can't guarantee it's Justice Haynes.
Yeah, I'm fully invested in this backfield as well because again, Kalen DeBoer his last year, man. I mean, we got Dylan Johnson as a top 30.
Oh yeah, he was so good.
Top 30 running back, and like typically he's gone committee in the past, but again, we saw last year he's not afraid to run one guy over and over and over again here, and I do think people are underestimating Haynes or Miller here, right? I like you have Haynes rated ahead of Miller. I have Haynes at RB 46, and I think I have Miller. Where are you? Where are you, Jam? Jam's down at RB 78 for me. So I got a decent gap between the two of them, but I went to the spring game for Alabama, and Miller looked really, really good. I really don't think the gap is as big as we're kind of ranking them to be here. And this could either be one of two things. Either one of them really does overtake the other, and boom, maybe Miller is a great value right now, or Haynes is the right guy to go after. Or it could be this 1A, 1 back, 1B situation where it's going to be hard to predict which one really goes off week to week, in which case all of us cry a little bit on the inside.
Yes.
But regardless, I think if you have to take a shot here on one of these two guys, you got to go Miller because Miller's going way later. Again, his ADP is RB 73 in drafts, so right around the 19th round if he's being taken, versus Haynes, RB 47, you got him much, much higher in drafts. And so I say that's probably the best strategy to go with these two guys, but also Haynes is getting enough discount that I'm kind of cool with grabbing both of them and just trusting that this offense scores 40 points a game and just seeing which one kind of gets sorted out. My competition that I have my eye on the most, I've mentioned it before, so I'm not going to go too in-depth here, but I'm really, really keeping an eye on this Notre Dame running back room, right? Audric Estime was absolutely fantastic for college fantasy last year, and I do believe that there's a clear top two in this running back room right now between Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. I'm a big Price fan, and I do think there's a world where both of them, similar to how we were just talking about Alabama, they're both getting carries, and neither one of them really gets to that Audric Estime clear workhorse role like we saw last year. I am very interested in this idea that Love is getting a ton of snaps in the slot. It's kind of similar to what ended up happening to Chris Tyree there, and I'm wondering if that work might open the door more for Jadarian Price to get more carries in the backfield because, again, they're trying to get both of these guys out there at the same time. And the only way to do that really is put Love in the slot, Jadarian Price in the backfield. But regardless, I do think whichever one gets the most carries could end up very well being a top CFF running back. And before we kind of finish up here, John, I'm going to throw two honorable mention competitions. I should have done this for quarterbacks last week, but these were two that I was considering in addition to Notre Dame. One is South Alabama there between Kentrell Bullock and Braylon McReynolds. I think whoever wins that job between those two guys will be a CFF relevant back, and they're both going at a pretty good discount right now. And then North Texas. Aodei very silently had a 1,000-yard campaign for North Texas last year. He's obviously gone to James Madison now, but they got two good options there. Nikaika Ragsdale, the kind of veteran of the program. They also bring in Zach Evans from Minnesota, who's a former 3-star back and a guy that I've liked since he was a freshman. And so I think whoever wins that job between those two is pretty much locked in for 1,000 yards. And so those are my two honorable mentions. John, I don't know if you had any that you wanted to throw out there in addition to Alabama, or if you just wanted to comment on either of those real quick.
Well, I do think the South Alabama one is more interesting. I did draft early in the process. I got a couple of shares of Kendrick Bullock, but I haven't recently because I don't think we have a clear-cut winner out of the two. Now, North Texas, I would go Zach Evans. That's who, if I had to draft one, I tend to like the backs who are coming from a P5, former P5 program, now P4 coming down a level. I do think in general, everything's in context, but in general, because they're athletic, right? They got to a real big program, and then you're going down where just the defensive players aren't as fast and aren't as big. So I'm interested in Zach Evans if he wins the job. Now, the one that just popped up is I do have some shares of Montrell Johnson, but he seems to now there's some warning flags that he got hurt.
Yes.
And then I was just looking into, I just added him to my rankings. The young man who's the backup, what was the right here,
Webb.
Jaden, who is getting some buzz out of Florida. I mean, it might be too early for him, but I'm interested in this Florida backfield if Montrell Johnson is out early in the season. So Jaden Ba is someone I'm keeping an eye on.
Jaden Ba and also Trayon Webb is he was the backup for Montrell and Trevor Etienne last year, the true freshman last year. So I imagine we'll see a healthy dose of either of those two guys if Montrell Johnson's out for a bit there. Yeah. I think with that, we come to the end of our show. John, obviously, we got a lot of exciting things coming up. By the way, if you're listening to this on Monday, go to YouTube and search up the FSGA YouTube channel. We will be doing the live FSGA College Fantasy League. I'll be joining Eric Froton on that stream. It'll be a ton of fun for us. I won that league last year.
I was going to say, Jared, I was going to say it for you. Jared is a defending champs of the FSGA, so it'll be nice battling with you again. That's a bigger league. Don't we have 16?
14 teams. It'll be 14 teams this year.
14 teams. So that's okay. So that was bigger than us last year at the Kings Classic. It's a big league again this year.
Yes, sir. So check that out. Look that up on YouTube. And then obviously, again, we got the Kings Classic draft coming up this weekend. So check that out on Saturday, I think at 10 o'clock, right, John? 10 o'clock Eastern?
Yep, 10 o'clock on the Rookie Big Board YouTube channel, live from the Hall of Fame game, or Hall of Fame.
And then in terms of everything else we got going on for Campus to Canton, again, go check out the rest of the podcast, obviously. But again, we're gonna do wide receivers here in 2 weeks. Again, I can't do it next week because I'll be in. Maybe I make it work for next week. We'll see. I'll have to shift my schedule around a little bit, but we'll make it happen. In addition to that, I think that's pretty much all else we got going on right now. John, you got anything else you want to praise for the people?
No, just please, if you haven't played in CFF, please do it now. Get in a best ball league. Get in an underdog league. I mean, this is amazing that Underdog finally jumped into with a big national tournament. Unfortunately, it's only available, I think, in 33 states or something like that. It's not every state in the union. But, man, they filled that up. It's incredible. They have a bunch of other leagues you can join. Obviously, Fantrax has college fantasy football. You will be addicted, everyone. It is a great game. It is amazing. And Campus to Canton is great. All of my information's on Fantrax. All the information, what I think is most incredible, Jared, the industry. There is so many more people, so many more perspectives, so many more rankings. I can no longer say that the information is not available to people like it was, back 6-7 years ago, where it was very limited. My friends, there are so many great sites starting with Campus to Canton. The information's all, there's no excuses not to play college fantasy football any longer.
Yep. Again, people kept saying all the time, like, oh, it's so much research, so much time and everything like that. I'm like, well, it took people like us to really kind of get this show rolling and do the research so you don't have to. We're here doing our best to make sure that we kind of filter out all the noise and make sure that you guys get whatever you guys need to win your leagues. So with that, again, I want to appreciate John, of course, coming on. Is always a blast to have you on, but even more so, all of you guys out there listening. Appreciate you guys for hanging out with us. If you have not already, go ahead and leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you're watching this on the YouTube side of things, if you're on the podcast side of things, make sure you follow the show, leave the 5-star reviews wherever you can. Make sure you guys check out the rest of the Campus to Canton Podcast Network for shows ranging on pretty much anything related to what you can think of for the college fantasy game. We'll see you guys back here either next week or the week after. Again, still trying to figure that out with the expo and everything. But until then, we'll see you guys then. Season's just around the corner, and I hope you guys have a wonderful and blessed week. See y'all.